Well, hi, and welcome to college. Class is in session, and love is in the air as we witness the Severance question to answer ratio vastly transform in an instant. My name is Ebube, and you are listening to Popcorn for Dinner. We are going deep today because we have a stack of papers to grade and at least 6 files to review. So many rooms, so little time. I couldn't get hold of a nurse or any creepy ass whistling dentists for that matter, but I did manage to find Chinedu and Jerry. So, what's good, guys? Did you bring ants or plants?
Oh my god, I'm good. I hate insects, so I definitely brought plants.
That's cool.
Yes.
They both exist on farms, so I think we're fine.
I might be the only one without plants, like in the vicinity, but I would rather bring plants. I hate ants as well.
I love plants, but I'm guessing anybody who's been here for a while might know that.
There's a beautiful plant in your background. If you're
I almost
watching
thought there
on
was one
YouTube.
behind Chinedu as well, but like I was wrong. It's just his mic.
Yeah, thank you. It adds to the atmosphere.
Yeah.
But yeah, how are you guys doing? What an episode! My goodness, are you guys frazzled? I'm frazzled.
Honestly, I think number one, this episode is one of the few episodes that actually it's the only episode that I watched once for the season. Obviously, because kind of the way we scheduled the recording, the turnover had to be very quick. But just to say that my notes are so scattered. Oh my goodness. Usually I kind of segregate it into the characters, but this one it's like my live commentary. Like
great.
It gets to a part of the episode where I put like something that we'll obviously discuss, and then like 5 question marks, 5 exclamation marks. Like, what is going on here? Sorry guys about my voice, by the way. Just recovering from a cold.
That is insane to me, because the way he's describing, because I say my notes are scattered sometimes, but the way he's describing his notes is how my notes usually are. Like, it is live commentary. It is 5 exclamation marks on it and everything. But like him,
marks is crazy.
This morning when I woke up, I was really looking at it like, this, of all the episodes this season, this has to be the one you most have to watch like twice or something, and I'd only seen it once. So like just before we got here, I was trying to watch as much of it as possible again, so I have richer things to say. But even still, it's like I feel like you can watch this episode over and over and over again to pick up more things, but also it's just wow, like it's a whole new show now.
Yeah, man. I'm so happy, to be honest. I'm really glad that something like this exists. This is the kind of episode that really affirms a show's confidence in its storytelling. And Severance has had a few of these, but I think this one was very special. And
when Vin Diesel just puts his hand on the gearbox in Fast and Furious and just takes it up a notch.
I don't know any of those references. I don't watch those movies. But
wow.
It's so crazy. No, it's actually, I feel like I shouldn't even be reacting like that, but it's hilarious because I was having a conversation with my brother last night about this specific franchise. and my many gripes with it, but to be fair,
my goodness, we'll pretend that didn't just happen.
I will admit that I do understand what you're saying. I do know that feeling of when he puts his hand on the gearbox to start saying some nonsense about Familia. I get it. Okay, I get it. It's fine. Next thing, we're on a plane runaway, but it's all right. It's totally fine.
We might as well be right
do you want
now.
A separate podcast just to talk about
it? It's fine. It's fine. I think cinema has that covered. Which, by the way, we have a ranking of the fast movies on Is This Cinema that everyone should go check out. And while you're there, check out everything else Is This Cinema is covering. The Oscars are fast approaching, and well, there are a lot of good movies. We've covered a lot of the great contenders. Most recently, The Brutalist, which is quite a journey, honestly. Adrian Brody has always been Adrian Brody, but I feel like he was really Adrian Brodying in this particular movie. And we're also covering a lot of other stuff everywhere else. The White Lotus is back, and I love visiting that place every week. Lola Day is hilarious. Obiora is Obiora, and Bankole is very confused as to what's actually happening in that hotel. I just want to know why people keep checking in to that place. And
Same.
how long will it take for people to
Same.
stop checking into that place?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Same.
That's a whole thing in itself. But of course, Yellow Jackets is also back this season, and we are covering that too. Stay tuned for our next installment. And the Invincible crew is doing great things. Mark Grayson is trying to figure out who he really is, and he has a lot of support, including from Ibuka and the rest of the Invincible crew. So honestly, there's too much going on in a good way on our feed and in this particular episode of Severance. Having said all that, I have to note that as soon as I saw a tracking shot of someone from behind, right, I knew it was Gemma. I was like, I just had this feeling, you know, the color grading also immediately made me feel like this was a flashback. You know, I'm very grateful to all of our listeners and viewers for sticking with us up to this point. You know, so permit me to get a little bit inside baseball with them, right? So people may not know this, but well before the season started, critics, you know, they were sent the first 6 episodes, right? So some reviewers had a bit of an idea of where things would go, and they were silently making educated guesses. My feeling back then was that the last 4 episodes would be not just pivotal, but significantly revelatory because of how the show wanted to keep its Gemma-related secrets close to the chest, right? And they've been doing that. So it made sense to me, right, that it would be a major key to the season, with Cold Harbor being such a through line throughout the motivations of so many characters as the season has progressed, right? So honestly, this episode was all kinds of exciting for me. So to see it start this way, and we're getting, you know, this almost classic flashback style episode that's not even really a flashback. It's like we're intertwining stories to give context. Like it was just amazing. Like it was so well done, right? I don't know, like it really felt like we were being transported into sort of the origin of the answers, to really see a version of Mark that existed before all the turmoil, to hear Gemma's actual voice talking like a regular human being and not someone who's like robotic and being called Miss Casey.
Mhm.
You know, seeing Gemma not just through pictures, but in the way that the people around her experienced her, that was something special. And I'm very impressed with the episode in this regard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you summarized it perfectly. I couldn't even add anything better. I think it was so impressive how, you know, people do flashbacks in TV and in film, and sometimes it's done well, sometimes it's okay, satisfactory. This was excellent. And I'm not even just talking about the flashbacks, like the editing into the next scene was remarkable. Capturing the
Superb.
actor's face the same to go across the scene was insane. And this is not something easy that they're doing. I don't even work in film, and I know this takes hours and months and
Nah, trust me,
Mhm.
a lot of work definitely
oh my God.
went into this.
And you know, it's the type of thing where Ebube and I, we do the very amateur version of like, you know, there's the big leagues. Let's say we're in the 10th tier, they're in the first tier. So we do
Yeah,
the
no
very
worries.
basic of what they're doing in terms of production. And you know how long it takes us to do some of these things. And you can
Yeah.
imagine
Yeah.
wanting to put out something to millions of people and making sure every single frame is perfect and just the way that you want it in terms of creative direction. You know, as viewers, sometimes we get impatient with why these shows are taking so long, but then you watch things like this and then
And
you
you just know
understand
why it's worth
perfectly.
it.
Yes.
The
yes.
wait is worth it. You just like
Yes.
it's so great when the wait is actually worth it. Not some other shows that will literally make you wait like 2 or 3 years for 6 episodes and it's nonsense.
Oh God.
Oh man.
No, but that's also another thing. Like you're talking about the editing, and yes, like I said, we were talking about this the last time and how they deserve a lot of praise, like the technical teams when it came to cinematography and sound specifically. And this episode is just another masterpiece. Like we're talking about the flashbacks, and I think we talked about this off camera last time about how the scenes like the diner scene and there was another one felt like they were preparing us for a slightly different show. And we
Mm.
saw it in this episode. All of a sudden, we're seeing natural lights, we're seeing yellows, we're seeing reds, and we're seeing like this world that is rich in color. And all of a sudden, it prepares our minds for, again, this intertwining of the flashbacks, this new story that they're telling. It prepares us for this idea of watching this, like, it's like a romance drama. You think this, the time traveler's wife, you see them, they're happy, you see them, they're in love, but you know that something tragic is coming, but it's still beautifully shot. We see different elements of a beautiful world that is not absent of greens and reds and yellows and just whites and grays all around. We're seeing the emotions that these people are going through from scene to scene. It's perfection, and everything blends well with the visuals, with the ray of sunshine, with the where it's a flashback versus where it's a camera flash, with the way the sound actually plays with the visuals as well. Like we can get into all that technical stuff later, but it's a brilliant. It's a stunning episode. That's like one of the first notes to even put down. It's a stunning episode.
Yeah, it reminds me of when Westworld decided to start showing us the outside world, outside of the park, right? It's very cool to me. And it's really worth noting, as you said, that this is the first time the show has ever presented any period or place to us that was not snowy or freezing cold. Like, of course, this is to make the love between Mark and Gemma feel warm and endearing, but
Exactly.
there could be more to it, and I think over time, like in the coming episodes, we'll definitely explore the implications of this specific tone shift and how this visual language is actually going to affect the way the show operates. The use of parallels to kind of facilitate all these cinematic and even thematic transitions was just excellent.
Mhm.
And the reason for this kind of became as clear to me as the gigantic smile it put on my face, because this episode is directed by Jessica Lee Gagne, who is the primary director of photography for the show. She's the lead
Yeah, I remember
cinematographer,
that.
right? So seeing her flex her muscles by extending that vision that defines the show's look, seeing that kind of spread to all parts and all aspects of the episode, not just cinematography, was a real treat. The episode was written by Dan Erickson, who created the show, and Mark Friedman. And you can tell that there was real attention to detail put here. They knew going in that this episode would essentially be the start of a new frontier for the show. It would be the audience receiving information that it might not even be able to handle all at once. Like, I really feel like people will need to watch this episode twice just to
100%.
just to ground
100%.
themselves, as
100%.
Chinedu was saying. A few things to note in the beginning of the episode, where a lot is being revealed at once. Crucially, she was being called Gemma, which gives us the final concrete confirmation that she is in fact alive, right? Up until recently, I was not sure what it would be. Like, is it that she's fully alive, as Regabi says, or is it that they have a version of her, or is it that she's forgotten all her, like, no, she's fully alive. So it's like, okay, what did they do here? Like, did she just leave that night to meet those people and then they kidnapped her and then they sent policemen to tell Mark, oh, your wife is dead. Oh, by the way, come look at this corpse. And then he goes to a tree. Like, so many moving parts must have gone into that. I blame Drummond. I know I normally blame Natalie, but I blame Drummond this time. He's a big problem, right?
Yeah.
So the nurse, right, she's asking, Gemma, where did you go? So clearly there are memories. So if she has memories of the past, she's definitely the same person. But then again, what if she isn't? We don't know all the information, right? At first, I was wondering if she lost access to some of those memories because, if she knows she's Gemma, then why has she resigned herself to remaining here? What does she believe is actually happening here? What promises have they made to her?
Oh,
and
God.
obviously, there is the fact that she is in fact severed as well. And I think that's a cherry on top, because watching her switch as soon as she gets into that dentist's room was quite the light bulb moment. Because it's always great when the answers bring more questions. Like, for example, these rooms, they must have a barrier that's identical to that of the 7th floor. And
Yeah.
she must switch every time she comes through the exports hall. So she is basically going through a version of what Mark and the Innies go through that is so heightened in so many ways. Because, for example, like, it's been like years and she hasn't seen sunlight. She hasn't seen true sunlight.
Yeah.
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 I mean,
I don't know, man. It's crazy.
I think in terms of, I think you've touched on quite a few things, but just overall on her experience and this episode, I think, I don't know if we're going into what happened that night, but I think from what I've pieced together, again, I've watched this episode only once, and what I've pieced together is I do feel that obviously the miscarriage had a part to play. It's
And wait,
possible that
and why she was chosen for whatever it is that's happening here, or?
well, we see her signing up to Lumen, so it's not possibly. But I think what's happened is Severance has probably been marketed as a drug, maybe to pregnant women, maybe to women. But I think it has been seen to take away pain. We know about the birthing center, and we know about Gemma going to the miscarriage, and then we see her apologize to Mark, and he talks about this is the next step that people usually take. So what I believe has happened is she's taking such a traumatic event, and she's probably seen the promises of this capitalist company to take away the pain. I might be wrong. And she signed up for it. And as the couple have slowly drifted apart, possibly again because of due to the miscarriage, she has then wanted to go on this full-on experience to take away the pain. And we see that snippet where what's the title of the episode again? When she's playing with the cards that is the, yeah, when she's playing with the cards that I have the same title as the episode. And then he tells her, she says how she's feeling, and then he tells her, but we can't stop. So obviously he's referring to what they're doing. This is, again, me theorizing. But
so
I do
you think
believe
what they're doing has to do with Severance itself? The procedure?
Yes. And I believe that the reason why Mark is even severed in the first place is because he saw Gemma be severed. And I think that had an effect on them. And obviously with them being just so distant as time goes on, she then makes a decision to do this thing by herself. And be who she wants to be without the pain. And they haven't seen eye to eye on that. I might be wrong.
Okay.
But that seems to be what the journey is.
I'm not against the idea, because when we asked the question, my thing was, yes, I could see a world where there was no real accident and she was fully aware of the fact that she was leaving to take part in this experiment. But I could also see a world where Lumen is extra evil and everybody thinks she's dead and they saw an opportunity. And when we get into more theories on what Lumen is doing, we can discuss how that might make sense. But just to question your theory here, are you basing the idea of her signing up to Lumen on the scene where they're in a hospital and she's signing a form?
Yeah.
That was them trying out. I think I'm assuming that was a birthing clinic. Or that was a fertility clinic.
Fertility Center.
It was a fertility
the
center.
Lumen logo. The Lumen logo was on the intake form.
Yeah.
But it was.
Yeah.
It's,
so I'm not
I
saying
think
she
it's some
signed
kind
up
of
to Severance
clinic.
there, but I'm saying her data became part of the company. Yeah.
Absolutely. Because there are things that they play on as well with when we discuss her escape attempt, there are just certain things that they play on that I'm like, how do they know to use this specific trigger? So I was questioning how they would know that, which is also why I was looking at the flashing cameras. Like, do they have enough of a digital bank of her existing through the love Mark had for her? But also, it could be that she signed up without Mark even knowing it. Like, I'm not against that idea either.
You know,
Yeah,
you know
just for
what
the
this
filler.
episode made me think about? How big corporations have access to our entire lives. I mean, Lumen has been seen
Okay,
from the
Alexis turned
start.
off right now.
You know, when Mark is taking his blood at the very first scene, and then we just see the logo, and then obviously we know about, you know, Gemma's data being there, and you just think about big corporations like the one that literally signs off this show, having access to your health data, how you browse, how you shop, how you
It's the whole thing.
sleep.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. And
We argue they technically have access, but don't ever use it for nefarious purposes. You know, just plausible deniability and all that.
I mean, that's center as well. Like, kind of the structure that they give it, and the fact that they treat it for Gemma as a familiar space, in a sense, like that place that they keep her, like her quote unquote living room, in what I'm kind of calling the Gemma lab, is basically the same floor plan as that fertility center. So one thing to note as well, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but the creepy dentist guy, Dr. Maurer, he was there. Like
In
he was
the
in, he
birthing
was
I
center.
didn't.
he
Okay, I didn't
was
see
as
that.
they walked in, he walked past them. He was there. So all of this is very, very, very connected, right?
Okay, evil theory here. He saw their desperation, had been watching them. They made the accident happen, but we can. I don't know. It doesn't matter. The specifics of how the accident happened don't actually matter. But like,
Well,
it could also be that they met there. He introduced it to her, or whatever. We can leave that for the fifth appendix.
It's left to be seen. We don't even know if they necessarily interacted with him. But we do know, of course, that he is the guy from Felicia's Breaking Bad standoff in episode 5. And no, episode 3 was it? It was episode 3, right? Was it 3 or 5?
No. It was 5.
Yeah.
It was 5.
Yeah.
5. So like we see what happens in that meeting and how he's there collecting all these dentistry equipment, and he's just whistling the same song. And you know, it's something that's supposed to creep us out in a sense. But let's rewind a little bit and go back to that near beginning part, right? Just look at Mark. Look at this guy. Like, it's like he's a third version of himself. That's a cross between his innie and his outie. A reintegration, if you will.
You think it's a cross?
In a sense.
Completely third new person.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's a third person that has qualities of both plus extra.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Essentially, it's a reintegration. Like, this is the real Mark. Like, this is him before he severed. So it makes sense that he's feeling like more of a whole person. You know, he has the Audi's cynicism and banter. He has the Innie's wide-eyed wonder and love of learning. And an all-round more intentional haircut, right? So it's just like
looking sharp.
Yeah, Miles was looking good. Like, I have to say, like and of course, like he's living his life, you know, his best life. He's doing what he loves. He meets somebody who turns out to be the girl of his dreams. You know, he's grading papers from like students that can't decide if they're creative or lazy, like all quiet on the Western Front. I mean, drug use by enlisted soldiers during World War I. I mean, I guess this is just par for the course of a history professor.
Yeah.
But them meeting at a blood donation event is just so college. Like that is so random in that sense. I mean, imagine hitting it off with somebody for a full minute and then going, "I'm sorry, who are you?" Like, I was like, "Bro, are you mad? What are you doing?"
No, to be fair, I think when he said that, it was more
like
just
like
being
do I know you?
No, being in awe of her. I think it was being in
it's
awe
like,
of
why
her.
are you so cool? I like you.
That very short small talk was already chemistry, you know, fireworks to him. So that it was just like, yeah, where have you been?
There's
him
a very
just asking like, what do you have there? You know, like, and she's reading Tolstoy, which makes sense, I guess, for what she does.
I love their love story. That's the thing.
I love their love story. There's an interesting parallel there with Mark's meeting of Helena in the previous episode, and I think his date with, I can't remember her name, but the woman he was dating in the very first season as well. Like the
Dana? Is
approach,
it Dana?
I can't.
I know
Yeah,
the black lady. Is it in season 1?
yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. Yeah, the
There's an
black
interesting
lady. Yeah,
parallel there with the flirting first, and then the addressing of the addressing of introductions and whatnot. It's just random tidbit that
yeah.
just keeps in mind as you said that.
And everybody has a
Um,
communication style.
yeah,
For example, Regabi's is to delay and obfuscate. Um, she clearly doesn't understand the situation she's in, which is why she's not being forthcoming with information to Devon. Devon's devastation is palpable. It is heart-wrenching. Performance is on point throughout this episode, but wow.
Very.
How did you guys feel, later in the episode when Devon's like, I'm going to call Harmony Cobell?
Before we started recording, I did say that this episode confirmed a lot of theories. I know someone did mention, not on the podcast, but someone did mention that Cobell was raised internally by
It was on the podcast. It was me.
Lumen.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, yeah, there's another,
Yeah.
you were right.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Just
And
quietly.
it can parallel to when we were questioning what is Miss Huang going through as well. Like this
Yeah,
might be like
exactly. So it
powerful or
confirmed that
like
too. So, she says she's literally raised and bred by these people. So we know for sure. And it probably sheds more light on the mask. Was it a mask that she was carrying around with the name tag?
yeah.
What was that? Yeah. So yeah, I
Like, where
hoped it
did they
wouldn't
get her?
happen. I hoped she wouldn't call Cobell. Just added too much was going on in that episode. I just
Yeah,
didn't
it's
need
too
that extra
risky.
chaos.
Yeah, I
It's too-
understand her anguish, but she should probably try to maybe not take complete control of something she doesn't understand. I mean,
Exactly.
We're so
insisting on
close to
calling.
saying she should try to chill, right?
No, I'm not good. Nope. No. But look, insisting on calling Harmony Cobell is just a bad move. Nothing Cobell has ever done indicates that she would be an ally in this situation.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And even the fact that Regabi immediately tried to jump ship, she's just like, okay, if you call Cobell, I'm out. If this guy wakes
Yeah.
up, it's your business. Like,
Yeah.
she's like, that's trauma. Like, she's just like, I'm not staying here. They're not going to find me. They're not going to kill me. Like, and it won't be because of you,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I really didn't want it to be that trope of the overly helpful character that makes the terrible decision of bringing in the villain into the whatever.
and you guys know we haven't actually seen Cobell now for 4 episodes. We haven't seen her since the end of episode 3.
I mean, I expect that we have to see her in the next one just because they referenced her now. But I could be wrong again. It's just I don't know. Like, but you're right. Like, we haven't seen her for a while, but we keep seeing her in the title sequence, seemingly running or studying everything. So, what is going on here? Maybe we don't see her into the finale, but we have to see her before the end of the season. I mean, we do see her in the trailer, so there is that.
Any ideas on timelines? Like, when do you guys think this origin story is essentially occurring compared to where we are now? Because the show is still very careful to not let us know when anything is really happening.
I did think about that. I was even thinking, even this what's it called?
The
Up until
flashbacks
the
now.
end. Yeah, up until the end, the experiment. I was wondering when was it happening because I was
have the
thinking,
same question
okay,
as well.
yeah, I was thinking, oh, I know that she's alive, but is she alive in the time, in the present time? But then obviously we see Milchick, coming out, and then the whistling man kind of just confirms it basically.
Bro, Milchick, man.
Oh, mine is even more. That was heartbreaking, and we were gonna get. I was gonna say that earlier, but we'll get to that. But like, mine was even more. How much of that? Because Mark, obviously, in his Shikai Bardo states, potentially, is at the same time reliving these memories. He probably has that interstellar moment where he's like seeing himself in the study and she's going off, and he's probably like, "You stupid idiot, go with her or don't let her go," or something. Like, I don't know. They didn't bother to give us that story. It's more important to see how they both almost neglected each other, and then that happens. But like, I was starting to wonder, like, even this, like the escape attempt, for instance, is that something that's happening in the now, or is that just an example of something that's happened before? Because remember that when Miss Casey was being sent back to that floor, she was already being very uncomfortable. So did we just see her first like realization of where she comes from on like when she comes through the expo tour? Because you would assume she always comes from there, but Milchick has this weird lie of, oh yeah, a public art exhibition, and your outie, to Miss Casey believes she has an outie, your outie went through the wrong elevator, but then also he wants you to go back in the direction you just came from. So Miss Casey definitely has questions, and Milchick has no time to answer this question. She's just like, yeah, off you go.
And
Where
it's not the
off
first
you
time
go.
he's refused
I
to give her answers.
Exactly.
I
So I'm
mean,
like,
to answer you, to
how many times has she
okay,
tried
sorry.
this? Sorry.
To
Like,
answer
how many
you,
times has she tried that?
I,
Yeah,
I
go on.
think I think it definitely happens in the now. We see it from Milchick's outfit. That's his.
No
He's
offense.
running the floor. Yeah, that's the
Okay.
outfit he's been wearing since he took charge. So even if it's not present day, it's at least since what it's
Recent
been. Maybe
times.
1 week, 2 weeks. Yeah, exactly.
I
So we
mean,
know
it's
that it's
recent enough
definitely
that Cold Harbor exists as a file. So that much we
exactly,
know.
exactly. But I want to briefly touch on what you mentioned in terms of Mark reliving that memory of that night and Gemma going, and it shed some light as to why obviously he's lost his wife and he's taken it hard, but we can see why he's so depressed, and he takes the decision to be severed because he's struggling with that memory. That's his last living memory of his wife. She offered to either stay at home with him, where she wouldn't have gone on the accident and died. This is obviously his own thoughts. Or he would have gone with her. Maybe he would be driving. You never know, and she wouldn't have died. So I think that scene tells us that Mark is blaming himself for her death, and has blamed himself for her death, and it's why he has a
Sounds
drinking problem. Huh?
sounds vaguely familiar. Well, it sounds vaguely familiar to like Kier's feeling of blaming himself for Dieter's death, if we believe that story. Just
Hmm.
just adding that, but
Hmm.
continue.
Hmm. But yeah, and imagine your last living memory being your wife having to remind you that she told you she loves you and you didn't say it back. In addition
Yeah.
to her wanting to
It's
stay
brutal.
back. So it is
Yeah.
it is very, very brutal. And you can imagine how heavy that is for someone to live through. And it explains why even the thought of her being alive, he's so against it. That is heavy to deal with.
Man, not them immediately calling Milchick though. Like she she hits that guy over the head and then she runs and they call Milchick and he comes back to do damage control because he was wearing his leather jacket, which means he was probably on his
Man.
way out to get on his motorcycle and go home, right?
True.
Like, and then
Doesn't
he
he wear
came
that
back.
thing in the office even?
He wears it in the office when he's
Sometimes.
coming in. He takes it off when
Yeah.
he gets
Fair.
to his office. Like,
Yeah.
that's what he wears when he's like on his motorcycle, right? So like, I mean, public art exhibition, wrong elevator. I mean, man, that's a
Which
whole
explains
thing.
the weirdness of the lie. He's probably just had to think on his feet as well. Like make
Nah,
sure she doesn't
he's
get
used to it
He
now.
has a catalog, man. He has a catalog.
Fairs.
It's just like
Fairs.
he has a file to just whip out every time. Come on. His lies are so extraordinary. Have you heard the story of the Graxupan?
Oh, that's going to be a classic forever. That's going to be a
Oh
classic
man, tell me
forever.
about it. But once she got severed, I knew the escape was never happening. Not in a million years, man.
Yeah,
So
like
that's the
oh,
other part that I wanted to talk about. Her own severance, because you touched on this, like it's so much more intense. And like someone like Gemma, for example, should never get reintegrated. There's way too much going on there in each room. And I imagine
That's true.
even the escape itself where she hits the doctor, that's just Gemma knowing that every time she walks into these rooms she comes out with some sort of feeling that she doesn't like as she's trying to escape. Imagine her being flooded with all these memories and this one person, this one face is the primary antagonist in all of them. She's going to kill that guy. Gemma of all people should never be reintegrated, but it's extremely painful because then when you see the
I
Allentown
have one
scene,
more person on my agenda. I'm very happy and proud. Thank you very much.
yeah.
Anti reintegration. Let's go.
No,
Oh my
fair.
god.
I'm pro reintegration from Mark in that he should find
Oh,
out what's
come on,
going on.
man.
But like, I'm now starting to see like maybe the barrier is there for a reason, and like sorry, just to grab my thoughts again. There's the Allentown room, for example, when she says when he lets her know that Christmas comes across every once a year, and she says it's always Christmas. And the dentist room as well, where she's here talking about, I was just here, but it's been 6 weeks for the dentist. It adds, we already knew that the innies are perpetually at work, but it kind of darkens the whole idea, both in terms of from a capitalist perspective, like the applications of severance. Like imagine hostesses that know what to do in a plane crash scenario and are not like are so calm. They're not doing anything. They just well, I mean, does Gemma look like she's actually doing anything as opposed to just being docile? I don't know. That's a different question. But my point is, so many different applications, but we're also seeing just how much darker it is. Like imagine the Annie of Gabby Arteta, who's only ever alive in the birthing cabin. So her entire existence is labor and a child she will never get to know. And the next time she comes up again, it's another experience of labor and a child she will never get to know. Gemma in the Wellington room is constantly going to the dentist. In the Allentown room, she's constantly with an abusive husband. It's just constant hell. Going back to the first episode, that humans have the ability to create hell if they wish, and they've just put these characters in a constant hell, whether or not they meant to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I screamed out, to be honest, when I realized what was really happening and how deep the severance thing went for her. Like, I literally said out loud, I think she might be a different person in every room. So she is a different person in every room, every separate space she walks into. Miss Casey says she's only been awake for a certain number of hours, and she knows the number, right? This explains the different outfits, but also the different hairstyles. Like, she's literally wearing something different every time she goes into every room. It's a different era, it's a different situation. And the doctor is there pretty much in all of them as something else. He's played by Robbie Benson, whom I'm sure a lot of us have seen a lot of different things. He seems to be a million different people, including when he's wearing that Christmas sweater that Drummond hates. And, Drummond says, when Mark is done, you're going to have to say goodbye to her for Keir. And, that has all of its own inbuilt implications, but it could mean a lot of things. Why are they, for example, making her in that room write with her non-dominant hand? Or I guess maybe it is her dominant hand, but she's been writing too long, and that's why the handwriting is not working so well out for her. She's in pain, right?
Yeah.
In the show, like, and this links to Mark because obviously he's going through his own situation here. He's essentially fighting for his life. They never really show him reminiscing about Gemma, but they do show it at the end when he wakes up, and you can see that pain in his eyes. It's so well portrayed. Like, this episode is very emotional in that sense. The juxtaposition between that and him finding out that she died. Looking at all the files, it's making me wonder what really is inside Cold Harbor. Like, what is that final step? Because she says she's been in every room except that one, right? And she asks him what happens when I go in there, and he says, well, you'll see the world and the world will see you. And I tend to not believe him because these people are very sinister, right? Right at the end, he tells her, your husband remarried last year and he has a daughter now, which, wow, bro. Like, you like her that much? You like her that much? That's what we're doing here?
The daughter one is especially wicked because the miscarriage was a girl as well, wasn't it?
Yeah,
The lie was
yeah.
especially sadistic. That broke me.
Yeah, he definitely wants her.
Season 1, showed us how evil this company is, and I think season 2 is, because we're on this mystery, I don't want to say we forget, but this company is really, really evil. And that's something that this episode drives home. Because think about the fact of what you just said, this, not only has she never seen sunlight, she's levels below everyone else. So, she's just stuck
like
in
PD
this
says,
room.
some people might live here.
Yeah.
And they
You know,
do.
I had that in my notes. PD's map was right. Like, props to PD because he must have explored so much of Luna to even discover
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, her hitting this guy over the head with the chair is just priceless catharsis I never expected. I mean, free will
Mm.
is a great thing, kids. Never lose yours. There are
What do
cameras
we
everywhere,
think?
though.
I was gonna say, what do we think they're doing with her teeth? There seems to be a lot of focus on her teeth. You
There's
know,
a lot of
he's
identifying information
the
for us
dentist,
as
and
people when
then
it comes to teeth. So it may be something
yeah,
physical, it may be something DNA related, it may be
No idea.
something about durability of something that they're creating. It's hard to say. Like it could literally be anything, but there seems to be a lot of focus in that room, especially since I believe that room was Wellington, right? And
Yep.
I wondered, if you guys actually recognized any of the names of any of those rooms from files whose names we've seen before. Like, I mean,
Tom
even with
Water.
Tom Water
was it?
definitely, which
Yeah.
Dylan was very particular about. There's
Yeah.
Allentown, of course. Yeah, there's
I
so
mean, I
many of
wrote
them.
down the names,
And
but I'm not sure which ones we've seen before
I'm
and which ones we
pretty
haven't.
sure
But
in
I have all the
episode
names.
one,
Yeah.
when Mark was running around looking for Miss Casey, he goes to the Wellington room, which the sign has been removed. Unless
Even the
I'm making
wellness
that
room.
completely
That
up.
was Wellness Center.
Wellness.
Are we sure?
That was just called Wellness.
Okay.
Because like
Yeah,
wellness is
Wellington
missing.
is a
You guys
file.
discussed that. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes like they're scrolling through their files like on their little computers, and then you can see the names of all these things, these places, these periods. Cold Harbor is its own thing, but I think
Have we seen
we definitely
Loveland
heard
or
about
Cairns
Tumwater,
before?
Cairns, I think,
Yeah.
Allentown. Like they may not see them out loud, but we kind of see them read. And like I think if you go back and you look at the screen whenever they're scrolling through those files, you start to recognize
You
those
see
rooms.
the names.
So
Yeah.
so that would really mean that Cold Harbor truly is the last step. I mean, Drummond said that the moment that Mark S finishes Cold Harbor will be seen as one of the greatest moments in the history of this planet. So I just wonder what is going on there. I mean, they're asking, why is he stuck? They said he was stuck on 96%. Drummond said that the nosebleed has something to do with it. So they still believe it's a nosebleed and they don't know what's causing it. They have no idea that
Yeah.
he's reintegrating. So at the very least, we have some headway there. Though Devin may be trying to ruin that by calling Cobell, but we'll have to see how that goes.
I think that's
Yeah.
also the crazy thing because it's like, I mean, I don't know about answering what they're doing. I'm quite happy to actually keep quiet and let them just show me rather than continue to theorize. There are theories that flash out and whatnot, but okay, actually, you just go because I'm even wondering where to bring this in. Like other than the names of the files, there's a lot here about. Even we're kind of skirting around it, but I don't know when you want to go into it. The numbers and the computers and the
Oh, yeah.
people on the other side.
That was
What the hell's
my mouth was
going on
open.
there?
I'm like,
Yeah, I want you to save that for the fifth appendix and
it's
we'll
the
get
same.
there.
It's the same thing Amazon was reportedly doing when you go into their stores to buy stuff. It's people that's actually scanning it for you. So
Oh
maybe
god,
there's a story there.
I'm so
That's
dead.
very wild. Before we get there, let's talk a little bit more about what was going on kind of on the outside in the past, right? We hear Gemma speaking Russian and, Mark seems to kind of understand it on a basic level just from being with her. She was reading Tolstoy in the beginning. The house that they're living in does not seem to be the same one Mark has now. It feels more vibrant, more lived in, more loved, more representative of its owners, right? And they receive people there. They were talking to Rickon and Devon, who apparently climb rocks in the actual outdoors. That's like a whole thing.
It's
Rickon
a
said
whole
he
different
relayed his
life
first
for
couloir
them.
in middle school, which, hey, yo, what? Like, I don't know. This is just like like I'm pointing this out to point out how amazing this group of people actually is together. It's like they found this cast, and then this cast is playing this eclectic group of characters that just are so unique. Like I don't know that these people could exist anywhere else. I mean, even right down to Gemma mentioning Chomolungma, which is actually what people who are from Tibet call Mount Everest. So,
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah. So she's like she's immersed in what they're saying. Like you can tell these people actually know each other, like they care about like their endeavors and everything. So when it then became clear that she was pregnant, I actually had to stop for a moment. And I had to just breathe to just mitigate how much more heartbreaking I knew this was about to get. Because, you know, it made me wonder, how recent is this? Is this like, okay, she was pregnant a while back. And this is like maybe, you know, 3 to 5 years ago, as opposed to say 10 years, or maybe that was several years ago. Like maybe it was up to 10 years ago, the pregnancy, the first one anyway. And, you know, she ended up losing the baby, and that's what turns out to be the case. So we don't really know when it's happening, but I think transitioning from that initial reveal of her being pregnant and them trying to have kids, to that clothed shower scene, and then going to MDR from there, that was definitely the show sort of upping the ante a little bit, as they were kind of trying to give us context and changes in perspective that we were not ready for, because we see what's happening in MDR, and then, you know, we get to, you know, that place, that control room, you know, where there is one monitor for each refiner. The credits actually refer to them as watchers, so I guess that's a whole thing in itself.
Okay.
Drummond was standing there by himself. I remember when I first saw the doctor standing next to Drummond, I was like, who is that guy? He reminds me of the dentist, only for me to find out not too long after that it is the same guy doing a lot of different things. And I wonder, because he's not severed, which means that he has to remember who he's supposed to be in each room before he goes there. There's probably nobody on the show crazier than him. There just probably isn't, you know? So I maybe, but like, you know, Drummond says that she tried to break his fingers. So I remember when he said that, I was thinking this must mean that Gemma has some semblance of free will remaining, right? But how does she use that? Of course, at the end, she uses it again to attack him. I don't know if he's okay or not, but as soon as she started running, and, you know, the nurse played by Sandra Bernhard was actually looking for her, and, you know, she starts shouting and everything, and then she gets back. Like when she gets back after talking to Milchick, and then the elevator opens, and then the nurse is just standing there. I'm just like, hey, God.
Yes.
I was like,
really
oh my
depressing.
God. Like, this is so bad. Like, she
depressing.
just breaks down. She starts crying. You
So
know, she doesn't
depressing.
remember anything that happens in the rooms, but she knows that she's here in a place that she can't escape. So I'm wondering, like, what did they tell her? Like, I know I said this before, but what did they tell her? They tell her, oh, you have to do this and this for Mark's sake, and like he's waiting for you on the outside. Like,
yeah.
what is it that has kept her here? Is she just resigned to being here because she's been here for so long? Right? Like the 6 rooms she went to in this episode, Billings, Lucknow, St. Pierre, Cairns, Zurich, Wellington, you know, these are files that we may have seen their names before, but, you know, Dr. Mauer telling her that, you know, she's been in all these rooms, like at that point, when she's been in all these rooms, you know, she'll see the world again. She asks about Mark, right? So she knows that she's working towards something. She has a North Star in mind, but she has still kept that personality, which tells us even more. Like the show keeps giving us confirmation that she's definitely alive. Like when he starts saying some nonsense, right? And she's like, can you please talk like a normal person? Like that was very funny. So she's not buying into all the nonsense.
Yeah.
And I just wonder what that will kind of mean for her going forward in terms of, you know, remaining in this place, having to see this guy again after hitting him. Because it's one thing having to see him in all those different rooms as all the different things he is. But it's another thing having to deal with him coming to interrupt her dinner.
Yeah, because now
stop her
Gemma
music from
has
playing.
that as well.
Like, why did he stop her music? What was that?
So
just the twats, man.
It's one thing that makes that whole scene extra heartbreaking. I mean, forget again cinematography, where the moment where Mark is getting the news of Gemma's apparent death is also the moment where Gemma is realizing the hell that she's trapped in. Because to answer your question of why she would still be here, maybe I don't know what the incentive was, but for whatever reason she attempts to escape. But she has now seen that she's locked in a foolproof system. The moment she steps into that elevator, which for all she knows is the only way out of there, she becomes severed. she becomes Miss Casey, who doesn't even know that the outie they're referring to doesn't actually exist, but probably at this point has some inclination that she doesn't have an outie. Because what is Gemma? Is Gemma an outie? She's an outie that's forever inside. Anyway, the point is, Gemma has this barrier that is almost because you can't take notes in the lifts, presumably, right? So she goes in with the key card. Miss Casey comes out, and Miss Casey has no idea that the Gemma on the inside is trying to escape, and Milchick is conveniently there to spin a lie and force her to go back. And I think that moment is so defeating because the way she breaks down in the lift,
it's a cycle. It's an endless cycle. She literally can't escape.
She probably didn't know that elevator was.
That's what I'm
Severance,
saying. But then,
there's no way she knows.
In that realization, she's probably looking at it. The only way now, if they promise her anything, even if they didn't promise her anything, the only way to get any hope of anything they might give her at the end is actually to follow it through, and she's probably going to be resolved doing that now, which is also sad because, like you said, do we actually trust that she will in fact see Mark, or that she won't just die at the end? Because again, this
you're saying die. What if they kill her? Like, I don't even know what.
That's what I mean. But this Shikai Bardo thing is very, very ominous. When you consider what it means and
ego death, kind of being in battle with one's own psyche. And, that room actually that they have her sleeping in is so clinical yet contained. It's like a cell or the kind of bedroom you see on a ship, the outfit that they have her in. I feel like even the fact that they have to take blood to get access to the room, like the nurse, she puts her hand there and then she gets pricked by a needle. And that's like that level of biometric authentication. Like, it's really, really deep what's happening here. So I wonder, Ragabi has said that Mark needs to reintegrate in order to get information out of Lumen. But assuming he was able to fully reintegrate, and by the way, I do like that they're showing that reintegration is not just a procedure, but a process. Like, it's a thing that has to happen over time. That makes perfect sense. And I like that attention to detail. I wonder what would happen if Mark actually was able to find his way down there. How would he get into anything? How would he get her out?
Yeah.
Like, what's he going to be able to do? The entire situation is bleak. They have her on a regiment, they're taking her blood pressure. They ask her, like, okay, of the medical tests she's taking, whether she's reading, whether she's eating, whether she's doing her calisthenics. They have her even taking in certain content. It's like they've gone out of their way to make her feel like she has an outside life, but it's an outside life that is prescribed by them, by Lumen. So I don't know how much hope there really is here. I feel like we're going to get to a point where he will complete Cold Harbor, and that could mean so many things.
Yeah, what if he gets reintegrated? What if he gets reintegrated before he can complete Cold Harbor, and everything that Lumen has been trying to do is fucked because they have to start over?
It's hard to say what the implications of that would be.
I imagine Mark S would still be able to complete it, but I'm just without
for sure,
knowing
because
what
he would know how to do his job still, but he would have an agenda, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And without him seeing the value of completing Cold Harbor, who's to say he does it?
Well, if he starts to realize that it has something to do with making sure Gemma is whole, he might complete it.
Fair enough.
I think it's interesting that, the entire Shikai Bardo thing is a memory that comes up as he's starting to wake up, because he is fighting for his life. It talks about fighting one's own psyche and just, like I said, ego death in that way. We're seeing signs of conflict and tension in their relationship there for the first time. And it makes sense that all the challenges they've been facing would have such a toll on them. But him going back to that, I think, implies that there is some level of guilt in the way that they parted ways. Obviously, 100%. When he gets that news, he's stunned. I don't know what that must have been like for him. Like the recovery process, he's still recovering. He hasn't fully become any real whole version of himself. He can't really interact the way he used to. Like, he is so broken by this. And the show really makes us feel that heartbreak, which is quite a lot.
Just another thing to add there in this whole, because I do have it, for the Fifth Appendix, I do have a theory on how Kier Mark and everyone else is processing the grieving stages, but we'll get to that. We might get to that later. I don't know if it'll be this episode, but basically, we also need to remember that this process that Mark is going through, that feeling, it's like they were already grieving the loss of a child and the
Hmm.
potential. Like they reached a point where they said, "Why don't we just stop?" So they were grieving the idea that they would have kids the way they wanted to already. And in grieving that, they reached that stage of depression, perhaps never quite found a way out of it. And in that state, he's neglecting her to the point that he almost doesn't say, "I love you" back. And he's not really paying
I mean, he's very
attention. And then
stressed,
she
right?
dies. Yeah. And then she dies. And then it's this other level of grief again that is added while he's still not even fully over the cycle of grief that is happening in the first place. So it's like, I'm looking at it and I'm wondering just how much pain he was in from those two cycles dropped on him that he hasn't come through to understand why he made the decision to sever. But then when we talk, or whenever, if we ever do talk about the whole grieving process and the severance trip, if there's any connection there, then maybe we can explore that even more. But for now, I'm just talking about it from the
No, we
perspective of
should
the
actually
weight on
like
his shoulders.
we should explore it. Before we
Uh,
close, in fact, I think this would actually be a good time to open up the fifth appendix. Um, you're talking about the severance chip, and I remember when she was talking to Dr. Maurer in one of the rooms. I think it was the main room that she stays in, the
mm,
Gemma Lab. You know, we actually see that severance chip in her head. So like they're giving us all these visual confirmations that she is a
yeah,
person who is alive, that is severed, that's being made to do a whole bunch of stuff, and she's had promises that have been made to her.
yeah.
Um, I find it interesting that she attacks this guy when he says Mark has remarried and they have a daughter. I think that was a bridge too far. Like it was one thing for her to kind of be like, okay, sure, like I don't believe you. But then he continues talking and then he like reads her he reads her book and then he starts saying nonsense and he responds in a similar way to Marcus, to the way Marcus responded at the beginning
Mm.
when he's like spoiler alert. And then she just hits him on the head. She's like, I feel like she could have just started running, but she's like, nah, I'm going to make sure you're knocked out for that nonsense you just said. Like that was just a way of getting back. Um, but yeah, I know, Jerry, you had additional thoughts on that. So yeah, fifth appendix
Oh
open,
yeah,
please go ahead.
it's so to start with that one. Why, like, how much of their day-to-day lives do they know? Because, like you just touched on, there's so many triggers in that moment. First off, in Allentown, he does the whole "I love you." Oh, I love you, and then she has to say it again, and then we see that play out later in
Yes,
like, yeah. There's that. There's the music. Why that song? That she somehow
I'll be
associates with
seeing
a
you.
seemingly,
Mm.
yeah, seemingly happy memory. And then again, "I'll be seeing you." And she's also like wanting to go back to Mark. Then he picks the death of Ivan Illich. And it's just like, what does he know about this specific date? How long have they been watching her? Or how much of her memories do they have or understand? Like, what is going on here? So that I don't have an answer to. It's a question. It's like, how are they able to trigger her so much? Was the escape thing even a test to see just how well the severance barrier is working? Like they gave her all these triggers at the same time to see how she would react as she was provoked to escape, but they were also prepared for an escape attempt. Like that would be another whole level of how evil these people could be. But good God, I don't even. Yeah, like I'll leave that one there. Well, what do you guys think?
It's a great spot though. I think it's a great spot. Obviously these guys have so much in them. Like Ebube pointed out, you use your blood to sign into a room. I mean, they've got data on every single thing that you could possibly think
Mm,
of. Even in Milchick's performance review, they said urine samples. Was it urine sample or something similar? They said
Yeah,
your
pretty much.
vitals
yeah,
seem
yeah,
good.
yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
there's nothing they don't have on you. And obviously being, having this revolutionary tech that goes into your brain, I wouldn't be surprised if they do have access to memories like
There
that.
you go. Yeah, because remember at the start of the season, I was also thinking about how the severance chip works. Is it somehow like it's recording memories on both sides and giving access based on the barrier that you crossed, for example?
Mm,
And
yeah.
that could be a way that they're able to take moments of your life. Again, I don't know if we'll ever even need to explore that level of how it works, but that was just something that came up. But on the grieving thing, I'm looking back to what is it that these people are actually doing? And I don't have an answer to that just yet. I don't want to attempt to answer it, but I go back to that story between Dieter and Kier. Dieter sees his brother die, if we believe that story, and goes into depression and says this is where he tempered woe. And
For the first time, yeah.
yeah. And I'm wondering, it looks to a certain, like, even when she's coming out of rooms, they keep asking, they keep checking, did you feel fervor, anxiety, despair? They're trying to figure out what emotion she felt as she left certain rooms. She's feeling intense fear in Wellington. She comes out and she just thinks, my mouth hurts. Like,
Yeah.
are they creating let me not say docile, but are they like, if they're rebalancing the tempers in your mind? I remember when we talked about the theory of them removing the trauma that's associated with different situations or memories and stuff like that, like as something they could be doing. If they're actually creating human brains that don't respond to trauma, how is that even something anyone would? You're interrupting a biological process here. Like, fear is a valid response to external stimuli that protects us. Fight or flight is needed by evolution to allow the being to actually survive. But if you don't have fight or flight, then maybe you can be calm and collected. Maybe that's Kier's vision. You can be calm and collected and make the right logical decision. Or maybe you're just docile and incapable of making any decision at all. We have no idea. But I'm even looking at it like, why I brought up the whole thing about grieving, I'm like, maybe Kier hasn't actually tempered any of these valid emotions like woe, malice, dread. Maybe he came up with this procedure to suppress them in a way. And this show has shown us Kier struggling with that, shown us potentially Gemma struggling with grieving with the loss of childbearing, Mark struggling with that, and then struggling with the idea of losing Gemma as well. We'll come to Chikai Bardo in a second. Losing Gemma as well. These are all people that seem to be stuck at the depression stage of this cycle or non-linear cycle of grief, for example. If they cannot reach acceptance, then they're continuing to, in a sense, suppress parts of themselves. And we also see that visually play out in this episode. Throughout Severance, we've just been used to very, not monotonous, but we're very used to seeing consistent colors across the show. For example, when we talked about the full life he had before, it's warmer. We're seeing the reds, the yellows, we're feeling the love. And then you start to wonder, is the show kind of telling us that even the dark parts of, like, the world we see prior is beautiful for all intents and purposes. Yes, there are painful moments, but it is a beautiful world. Is it even sensible to suppress these valid emotions, or should we be looking to simply accept that they are part of life? And is Lumen trying to circumvent that process? That's just something that keeps my head spinning. And then the last part of it is the Chikai Bardo thing, because if you take it outside of the dialogue, Chikai Bardo is the fourth state of, it's the fourth Bardo. It's the state when the moment of death between living and fully dying. And it's, some people believe that if you're fully sort of, if you can achieve a certain, like, that's the best opportunity that any soul has to receive enlightenment, because once you're in that state, you get kind of like sucked into all these visions and hallucinations of what might be hellish, but it's not actually real. But a soul that has actually trained well for the stage in life is able to traverse that and escape the karmic cycle of death and rebirth, which brings us back to, what is Lumen doing? What is the revolving? If someone, say Gemma, was close to the point of death and they're trying to help master this idea of, again, the ego death, fighting oneself, removing the attachments to your traumas, removing the attachments to your personal identity, and coming out on the other side either fully dead or fully alive as this newly enlightened being, or escaping the cycle of rebirth, of death and rebirth, then maybe that's where this revolving comes in. Like, I still don't know if it means immortality or if it means that, like, actually they're just trying to, like, maybe Kier in his vision actually thinks he's being kind and he's doing like the ultimate form of therapy where he removes everyone's traumas. There will be no more pain and he'll just blissfully go on into acceptance. But in reality, it doesn't look like anything is being accepted. It just looks like everything, down from the colors in the show to the emotions in the show. It looks like every single thing is being suppressed, and that cannot be healthy. That was long, but that's kind of me trying to like throw as many things into one theory as possible. But yeah, that's it.
Okay. Chinedu, do you have any thoughts on this?
I mean, what I would say is, just to follow up on a couple things is, number one, I think I agree that there is something with them marketing this thing as a pain suppressor. You know, I've said it that um Mark did this after he lost his wife, Gemma did this after, you know, the pain of a miscarriage. And I've said it before that Banky has alluded to this before. No normal person has ever gone through severance. The person, you know, the politician that is marketing this thing, you know, that is the public figure for severance, his wife goes through this to avoid pain, you know.
Mhm.
So I think there's something in that, in terms of obviously the exterior belief is, you know, it removes you from experiencing that pain. Why they tie it into work, I don't know. But obviously internally we see that there's so much complex work that's being done. And I think, just to follow up on that, it's a brilliant show. It shows why the show is so amazing. There's so many things, and you know, you're talking about tempering war, and you're talking about the parallels between, you know, the story that he told about this cult, this father figure, and you know what's
Mhm.
going on at the testing floor, what's going on the server floor. You know, the writers are cooking, bro. They are cooking some insane script here right in front of
Yeah,
us, and you just have to, you know, I said it to you both that before we started recording it, you know, at some point you have to stop the theories and just appreciate the amazing
exactly.
I agree.
piece
Yeah.
of art that they
Yeah,
are giving us. You know, you just have to sit down and just be in awe, because when you start pausing and, you know, freeze framing everything, you start to lose the essence of what these people are creating this piece of art for us for. So yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is I think that's a good note to call it, actually. This episode, honestly, is just so emotional. I see this as an episode that really emphasizes love and feelings. I see this tonal shift as something that reminds us that there are real people being affected. And
Mhm.
the portrayals by the actors was just so good. Like, this episode was one of heartbreak, it was one of connection, and it was one of stolen connection too. Like, we're really
Mhm.
seeing what's been taken from these people. And we can only hope that they'll get it back soon enough. So, yeah. Thank you guys
Can
so much for your theories.
I just end on a
Sorry
question
to
to
all
you
Mark
guys?
and Heli ships out there. Sorry to all
Oh
Mark and
God,
Heli ships out there.
yes. Oh,
Nothing
sorry.
for them
You
this week,
just
man.
you opened
I know
the
AJ is very happy somewhere. AJ is somewhere
Yeah,
very,
yeah.
very
Oh my
happy about
God.
You
this.
know that Wolverine meme where he's just holding the picture and just holding it there. That's them with episode 6. Just, you know, looking back on
Ooh.
the last piece of love
Chinedu,
story they have.
Chinedu, I'm so sorry to do this, but like I feel like I have to say this before we cut off because I was just gonna say we should end on counting how many rooms we all saw because I counted 12, but like as you mentioned that it was something
Mad.
I wanted to bring up. Um, if Mark gets reintegrated, now I'm seeing Mark loves Gemma. Mark S gets the memories of Mark and understands that he loves Gemma. You remember when we were saying like there's no room for Mark to have both Gemma and Helena as people he loves. Maybe there is, I don't know. But like, does a reintegrated Mark become someone who accepts that he lost Gemma and is now in love with Helly? But that's one side. The flip side is, let's imagine Mark continues a relationship with Helena or Helly. Let's even imagine Helena and Helly get reintegrated or whatever. Is Mark's relationship affected with the knowledge that he had this huge burning love for Gemma, and maybe Helly just doesn't quite compare? Or is he going to ignore that? Like, I'm now intrigued to see how that plays out. I'm not interested in the whole pick Jacob or Edward, or pick Stefan and Damon, none of that. Just how are these individual relationships actually affected by realizing, because they have suppressed his love for Gemma, and this child, this being, this Mark, has discovered a new form of love, but the grieving Mark is still in love with Gemma. So is he able to accept, or is there a conflict there? It remains to be seen.
You know my answer to that? Say no to reintegration kids. That's my answer.
Yeah, you're probably right about that.
And you know what? The warning, the screener thing, they did say this season, the innies and the outsies get to see the dangers, or whatever the word they use, like essentially telling us the wrongs of trifling with the severance barrier. So like I might be with you. Like, just if you've been severed, just stay that way.
It took 7 episodes.
Easier said than done. But yeah, I guess let's just go ahead and end it there. Thank you all so much for listening up until this point. Thank you, Chinedu and Jerry, for your theories and insights. We have 3 more episodes in this season, and so much will happen. I really feel like once Cold Harbor is completed, if it does end up getting completed, it really might be something monumental. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. Until then, definitely check out everything else that we are covering on the Popcorn for Dinner podcast. We are loving all of the shows, The White Lotus, Yellow Jackets, Invincible, and we have a lot more that will be coming in the approaching weeks. So keep it locked to the feed, and we'll see you next time. Be well.